From 1830 to 1873, there were more than 100 United States patents granted for doorknobs. The Victorian era was the height of hardware's use as decorative art. Each floor of our Zehr Estate has its own theme of doorknobs, which I find very fascinating. Our first floor at Zehr Estate contains elaborate decorative doorknobs along with their rosettes and/or escutcheons. Our circa 1853 house was rebuilt in 1873 with its East Lake style appearance as a wedding gift from DeWitt Slaughter to his son, Samuel Wickham Slaughter. Our hardware on the first floor is of the vernacular Eastlake style hardware, which was popular from 1865 to 1890. During this time period, many of the Victorian doorknobs were made of cast bronze with ornamental patterns. It was in 1870 that a compression casting method was introduced that accelerated ornamentation of hardware. The best grade of knobs during this period were usually made from cast bronze or brass. East Lake was a popular design style in the late 19th century and is characterized by a combination of naturalistic and geometric patterns. I found the name Hopkins and Dickinson Manufacturing Company on some of our door lock sets that hadn't been worn off. They were a manufacturing company of bronze hardware. They had factories in Brooklyn, New York, and in the Darlington section of New Jersey in Bergen County. In New Jersey, the plant was known as the Nickel Works plant and was established there in 1873. I found that the Darlington factory had been closed prior to 1882. By 1883, there was a Hopkins and Dickinson factory in Newark, New Jersey. The New York factory had been started before the New Jersey factory and was noted for its bronze hardware. This is where our hardware came from. Most likely, all of our Victorian bronze hardware was purchased at the same time during its rebuild in 1873, and most likely from this company. Bronze is a metal alloy consisting primarily of copper, usually with tin as its main additive, but sometimes with other elements such as phosphorus, manganese, aluminum, and/or in the 20th century, silicone was added. Brass, on the other hand, is an alloy of copper and zinc. The pictures in this video are pre-revitalization, no cleaning, etc. And there are missing parts, which at some point we will replace with pieces as close to the original as we are able to find. I haven't been able to find the exact year in which Hopkins and Dickinson was started in Brooklyn, New York. In 1870, Hopkins and Dickinson had a patent involving the improvement in combined latches and sliding doors. I found Hopkins and Dickinson advertisements in newspapers as early as 1871. This is from July 11, 1871, from the New York Daily Tribune. Notice the patent date of March 30th, 1869 on the picture of the lock. This is from the New York Evening Post, February 1st, 1872. The use of bronze as a material for builders' hardware, although long common in many parts of Europe, especially in France, Russia, and Germany, has been introduced into this country only within the past 2 years. The firm of Hopkins and Dickinson, which is exclusively devoted to this kind of work, produces castings with lines as sharply defined as though cut by the chisel when first taken from the sand. The fineness of the workmanship in the window fastenings, shutter bars, and other small articles is equal to that in the largest door hinges, the heaviest of which weigh 25 pounds per pair. Among the new styles of locks of this metal is one for sliding doors, which enables them to be pushed back flush with the wall. By touching a spring in the edge of the door, a handle flies out when it is desired to draw the door forward. We are fortunate to have 2 sets of these sliding doors, or what we call pocket doors. From Paterson, New Jersey Daily Guardian, June 30th, 1882, the factory buildings at Darlington, formerly occupied by Hopkins and Dickinson, have been turned into other uses. The New York factory was still in business in 1890, but around 1895 the business had closed. This is from the New York Times, November of 1902. Winding up an old company. Judge Scott of the Supreme Court has granted an order dissolving the Hopkins and Dickinson Manufacturing Company. The company has been out of business for several years. From the Builder's Hardware, a Manual for Architects, Builders and House Furnishers by Howard Clarence H. Blackall, Boston, Ticknor and Company, of 1890. The Hopkins and Dickinson Manufacturing Company bears an excellent reputation in the hardware trade, turning out a very satisfactory class of goods with clean, sharp castings and effective chased work, special care also being given to the colors of the metal, and with exceptional results. Also in this manual of 1890, it stated that artistic hardware usually implies an unnecessary expense to the minds of most buyers, and unfortunately, the implication is a correct one, even with very simple designs. We have 3 sets of double doors. Originally, the home had 4 sets, for we saw evidence of where the 4th set used to be. These doors have long vertical bolts in them at the top and bottom of one of the doors to the set. The door to the set which contains the bolts would have been an inactive door for the most part, and therefore would have been bolted at the top of the door jamb and into the floor. We are missing a couple of the original knobs, which someone replaced with like this silver knob. The design on this doorknob was known as pigeon, which I find very interesting since when we purchased the property, there were many pigeons living here, which is no longer the case. This pigeon theme is on the doors of the dining room. Here is an oval doorknob to a swinging door, and here is another design on the first floor. I love this letter slot and this call door bell pull. It's a shame that it's missing the bell portion on the inside. Window locks. I love this one on the side of the window, and these locks that are on a couple of the doors. I also love the decorative window sash lifts. I want to show you some of the shutter hardware also, which are on the first and second floors. The louvered shutters with adjustable louvers were made available in the mid-1800s. Many Victorians preferred heavy drapes, but I read that in Eastlake-style homes like ours, the interior shutters were preferred over the heavy drapes to cut down on the dust that the heavy drapes collected. We have tier-on-tier shutters, which are nice, for we can just open the top 1 or 2 to let in the light, but yet keep the bottom closed for privacy. Some of our interior shutters have built-in pocket areas to fold them away into when the shutters are open, a very nice feature, which can be seen here as the top tiers are folded into the pocket areas. We have just a small reminder of what is left of the original pantry's hardware. Our second floor theme is black porcelain doorknobs with designed rosettes and escutcheons, except the entrance and exit doors of the former apartments from 1945 to 2010, which were replaced with more modern doorknobs as the time went by and replaced in between tenants also. The black porcelain doorknobs from the Civil War time period into the 1930s were called jet, and they were made from red clay with a black glaze. China and ceramic knobs were imported from Europe and popular from the mid-1800s until the early 1900s. It was about 1860 that the porcelain knobs became a norm of the time, especially in rural areas and in the service areas of wealthy homes. I read that it was common to have the fanciest of hardware used on the first floor, where the visitors would be, and common to be less fancier on the second floor. For a second floor, I feel ours has some pretty fancy hardware. Our third floor, originally a ballroom, turned into several rooms around 1945 when turning the home into apartments, contains glass doorknobs. Glass doorknobs date back to 1826, but weren't appearing commonly all over until after the United States entered World War I in 1917. Because of the war, metals were needed for airplanes and ammunition, so the glass doorknobs were taking the place of the cast brass, bronze, and iron doorknobs that had been prevalent since 1860. By 1920, the largest hardware makers were mass-producing doorknobs of molded and machine-cut glass and cut crystal. The glass doorknobs were being used through the 1940s, right around the time that the former ballroom was turned into 2 apartments around 1945, so it makes perfect sense that the doorknobs on this third floor are glass. I can't forget the basement. Luckily, where we were missing some of the hardware on our doors, we have found some of the missing pieces in the basement, and we will be putting those back on. This piece is not Hopkins and Dickinson. It is Redding Hardware Company, known as the Columbian design. It is characterized by snarling wolf heads. This company was founded in 1851 in Reading, Pennsylvania, and by 1888 it was a major manufacturing company. This company ended in the 1950s. Here are some of the basement's hardware. By the 1950s, the hardware changed and it wasn't as fancy, and this can be seen in our former carriage house and former outbuilding, which were both changed into apartments around this time. The hardware is the same in both of these buildings. We added the exterior white porcelain doorknobs during our renovation of the former apartments' garages into storage areas. I'm so looking forward to cleaning up the hardware.